Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a video talking to you about this rifle you see before you. You've probably seen this here and there in some other videos recently, but now we're finally going to be doing the review, and if the title didn't give it away already, this is my Bergara B-14 Ridge chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor. Now, I've had this thing for quite a while. I've put quite a few rounds through it up to this point. However, I recently took this thing through an intro to long range class where I was stretching this thing out to 1,000 yards, and I feel like now that I have that experience under my belt, I actually feel, I don't know if qualified is the right word, but I feel informed enough to be able to actually give you my thoughts on this rifle overall. Talk about some of the pros and cons about it, how it comes set up out of the factory, and what I have done to make this thing a little bit more usable for my needs. So we're going to go ahead and roll in some shooting footage real quick of this guy in action, and then we'll start walking through how this rifle is set up, and again, what kind of accuracy I've gotten, my experience with it overall, and again, some of the changes I've made to accommodate for the short cuppings. Sure. Do you want to call out the distances, or just...
Sure.
Go on a line.
I'll just call it out and let you do all the spotting on your own.
Okay.
Or shots and impacts, spots and everything on your own.
Okay.
400.
400.
And it's not easy like mine. It's not 999.
Well, now that I've had so many impact. 200.
Seven?
7. Tighten your bipods up.
For future classes.
Impact. 500.
The second time? I don't know if it's going to be more than
I'm not privy to what Moses' current plans are at the moment, as far as like more courses. Other than I got 2 more classes next weekend, and those are just spotting classes, 1-day spotting classes. 900.
800.
Uh, 300. Heavy transitions. Name of the king. 6. 400. Seven.
because I understood injuries as soon as I
First part for me is I have to go home and look at all my scopes and figure out which is which.
800. Well, you start to realize real quick that inches doesn't matter past 100 anymore. It literally doesn't matter. So if it doesn't matter, then you don't have to do all those equations. You don't do those equations. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
depending on what you decide.
All right. See if I'm gonna break your first round impact streak. Go to 1,000.
Dealer pricing on a lot of the higher end optics.
See if you got it.
I'm specifically.
Here, I'll get on glass for this one.
I will say this bag makes a huge difference.
Yeah, like I said, it's
So
big time. All right, I'm on.
Oh,
Oh, great on elevation. It's just off on Yep. You feel a lot more comfortable?
yeah,
That was like dumb easy.
yeah. That's pretty cool.
Especially on how it lines up with just that 150 rule.
Yeah.
Like you got a really good setup going right there.
Well, and so just as an introduction, I'm going to take the side of the screen here to list out some of the specs. This one specifically is the 18-inch version. I believe they have a couple different barrel length versions in 6.5 Creedmoor for this rifle, along with obviously different models. They've got their HMRs, they've got a bunch of different options out there. Again, this one being the Ridge is more set up kind of in a hunting configuration. I mostly went with that just because I wanted to do something a little bit lighter weight than like a dedicated bench gun. I wanted to, if I had to, be able to kind of hike around with it. But that wasn't going to be my primary usage for this. I wanted to kind of make it a little bit more of a somewhere in the middle kind of a thing. So some of the features that it had that kind of made me want to try it in the first place. So out front here we have a threaded barrel. I have one of my YHM flash hiders on there right now so that I can use this thing with my YHM Resonator K. So this is threaded 5/8 by 24. They are able to do that because this thing has a pretty decent profile barrel, not too skinny where they had to go to a smaller thread pitch. So standard 30 cal muzzle devices will go on here no problem. Whether you want to be able to put a silencer on it like I did, or be able to put like a muzzle brake or anything else on there. It does come with a nice thread protector, so if you don't want to do anything out on the front of this, it will look like one nice smooth transition with just a little bit of knurling on the end. So threaded barrel was kind of a must for me. I didn't want to have to pay after the fact to have a gunsmith thread it, so I wanted something ready to go out of the box. Now, we already mentioned the barrel, well, alluded to the barrel. The barrel on this thing is excellent. So one of the things that Bergara is known for those of you who don't know, Bergara is a manufacturer out of Spain. They are known for their barrels. The accuracy that I have seen across the board with all Bergaras, not just my own, but ones that belong to friends, have all been excellent, and they tend to be a little bit on the heavier side as far as the profile goes in comparison to other rifles of the class. So again, with a more hunting-oriented rifle, a lot of times, like on the Christensen Arms Mesas, a lot of Remington 700s, you see a pretty skinny barrel to help save weight, but you lose a level of accuracy or at least consistency once things start heating up that you're not going to be sacrificing on this Bergara rifle. Now, a lot of people, when I picked out this rifle, friends of mine that were in the know, so to speak, were a little surprised that I wanted to do an 18-inch 6.5 Creedmoor. One of the things 6.5 Creedmoor is known for is long-range precision and accuracy, and the main thing you give up when you go to a short barrel isn't accuracy, but it is velocity, and that velocity is going to affect how effectively you can reach out at longer distances because that bullet's going to go transonic sooner. Now, we will be addressing how this thing did at long range. Like I said, I have stretched this thing out to 1,000 yards, but I wanted something that was going to be a little bit shorter in overall length, especially because I knew I'm almost always going to be shooting this thing with a silencer on it, so I was willing to give up those extra couple inches over guys running, 20, 22, or even 24-inch barrels, which is what you will typically see on a 6.5 Creedmoor. Now, moving back into the receiver, Bergara uses a Remington 700 pattern receiver. The nice thing about that is that makes your aftermarket options extremely abundant. No matter what you want to do, whether you want stocks, triggers, scope bases, anything like that, there are going to be more options for the Remington 700 pattern than anything else on the market, at least that I'm aware of. So that was a nice thing. It's not a deal breaker because there wasn't a ton of stuff that I had initially planned to do with this. I didn't initially plan on changing out the stock, although that's something we have done. And I knew that no matter what I get, I'll be able to get a 20 MOA base for it and all that. So that wasn't a huge concern, but it is a nice thing because having more options also means you're typically going to get better deals on those options because there's more competition in the marketplace for those items. So for example, I'm running a 20 MOA loopholed Picatinny rail on top of this thing, so that 20 MOA gives me a little bit more elevation adjustment. I'm running some of the Vortex Pro rings, and then I have a 6-24 primary arms ACSS Athena BPR scope on top. Kind of a mouthful, but this is a mill scope and it has been phenomenal. I'm going to be doing a dedicated video on this scope, but this is one of their GLX line scopes, so kind of around that like $800-ish price range, and it has been phenomenal. I've really enjoyed it, but again, that is a topic for another video. Now, as far as the kind of bolt and the action on this thing, you get a nice oversized bolt knob right out of the gate that has nice knurling on it. A lot of times I see guys with Remington 700s, they want to enlarge their bolt knob. They can get something that bolts on, or they have it cut off and threaded. This has a really nice option out of the box. I have had zero complaints about it. It's nice and easy to grab onto while I'm laying prone or in whatever shooting position I'm in. And so I really like the way this comes out of the box. The safety is very, again, obviously Remington 700 style, so that's something a lot of us are going to be already familiar with. So nothing too much to worry about there. Now, one of the things that we're getting into when we go to the Ridge specifically versus some of the other Bergara options is no detachable box mags. So you have an internal 4-round magazine that requires it to be fed from the top. And I knew that was going to be one of the shortcomings that, with the usage I had in mind for this rifle. I wanted detachable box magazines. I wasn't exactly sure what route I was going to take at first on how I was going to achieve detachable box magazines, but I didn't expect the internal magazine to play such a role in some of the issues that I had with this rifle, but we'll touch on those later. But suffice to say, at this point, you have to top feed. You can, again, holds 4 rounds. It is possible to load in a 5th round, push the top round of the magazine down, and push the bolt in over it, so you can have 5 rounds total in the gun. But 4 rounds is definitely how this is set up, and I'm pretty, well, actually no, in the accuracy tests you'll see later, I was just single feeding, so I did do 5-shot groups, but a lot of the groups that I shot over my time with this rifle, just for my own sake, were 4-shot groups, just because I didn't want to have to, break my chin weld and everything after 4 shots just to throw a 5th one in there. So for what that's worth, again, things have been rectified, as we'll see later on in the video. Now, moving back to the stock, this normally has a pretty traditional sporter configuration stock. That wasn't going to work for me because the comb height just was not adequate for me to be able to comfortably lay in the prone position and shoot. If you're doing hunting where you're going to be, bracing off a tree or shooting sticks or something like that, not a huge deal. But when you're going to be laying prone for extended periods of time, you need to be able to just totally rest and relax with your face on the stock, and that was not something I was able to do with the factory stock. So underneath this stock pouch, I have layers of yoga mat. Several years ago, my wife, who is now my wife, made me buy a yoga mat because she was going to make me start doing yoga. Never done yoga outside of jiu-jitsu practice, but I've used that mat to cut up into cheek risers for stocks. Then I use some like that camo, like Coban style wrap to hold that in place. And then I put this stock pouch over top just to hold everything in place. Also give me a little bit of extra height. It does have a little storage pouch for extra rounds there, but I don't typically use that. For what it's worth, this is the Balls Mark II stock pouch from SKD Tactical. Normally it would have a squeeze bag under here. I was just never super impressed with the squeeze bag, so I took it off. So I'm just using it as a cheek riser. And it worked reasonably well enough for what my needs were. And then underneath here, to wrap up the extra accoutrements on this thing, is just a Magpul RLS sling. So just their simple rifleman sling. And I can't say much about it other than trying to shoot it slung into I haven't really used it much. Most of the time this thing has a Harris bipod on it. I've just taken that off for now for simplicity's sake. I'm a big fan of the Harris bipods. That's what I mostly have. So again, when I'm using the bipod, I'm not also typically using the sling, but it is lashed there if, for whatever need I might have it for a sling, which is numerous. So anyway, that's how this thing is configured. That's how it's going to come out of the box. Actually, one thing I should probably mention that's going to be important on any precision rifle is the trigger. Now, the trigger, to be completely honest, it may be adjustable. I don't believe it is adjustable. However, it was so good out of the box, probably right around 2.5, 3 pounds, that I just haven't messed with it. I haven't had any need to mess with it. If you do want to mess with it, again, being that this is a Remington 700 pattern, you can do whatever you want. Geisley, Timney, there's so many different options for Remington 700 triggers that should just drop into this thing just fine. But the factory trigger has been so nice that I really haven't felt the need or desire to sink another couple $100 into a trigger that's not probably going to make much difference at all over the one that it comes with. So now that we've gone over how this thing is configured, let's talk a little bit about what my experience has been with this thing, some of the shortcomings that I've run into, and what I have done to address some of those. So overall, my experience with this thing has been positive, but there were some things that have kind of arisen over my use with this that needed addressing. So one of the first things I ran into is, after I got this thing, mounted the scope on it, everything was shooting really well. I was shooting a lot of the Cellar & Bellet 140 grain full metal jacket that was plentiful at the time and surprisingly cheap at the time. And this thing, I could not shoot bigger than a 1-inch group. Like, this thing was sub MOA all day long with it, and it was doing really well with cheap ammo. I was happy. I was extremely happy with it. Yeah, there's some ergonomic things that still needed dealing with, as we'll get to, but this thing was shooting great. So then came time for me to mount a silencer on this thing, and I wanted to get it set up for my white gem silencer. So I took this thing out of the stock so that I could lock the receiver in a vise, thread on my muzzle brake or flash hider, and then when I went to put it back together, everything seemed fine. However, I started noticing when I went to the range that I was getting double feeds, like very consistent double feeds. And double feeds is not something you would typically run into on a bolt action rifle. Typically that's something you get on, semi-auto gas guns with poor magazines or something like that. So it was something I was really surprised with. My brain didn't really put 2 and 2 together about it starting right after changing out the muzzle device, so removing and reinstalling the stock. So I got in contact with Bergara's customer service. I didn't tell them I'm a reviewer or anything. I was just contacting them to find out what they recommend. And what they said is that the little the box that kind of holds the rounds inside, which is not attached to the receiver and it's not attached to the bottom metal here, was possibly not installed correctly, and that could be binding, and that could be causing the double feed. So I realized that I probably didn't take enough care and attention when putting this thing back together, so that was causing the double feeds. So after a lot of trial and error trying to get everything in there just right, we did address the double feeds, but that was just a really weird issue to run into and not one that I would have expected. Now again, with things that we've done, as you'll see later in the video, that's not an issue at all anymore, but that was just kind of a weird thing to run into. If you are experiencing double feeds with these after taking these apart, just contact Bergara customer service. They'll walk you through what to do, give you your torque specs and all that. So that was the first issue that we ran into and then was resolved. The next issue was just getting consistent good cheek welds with it. So again, after doing this, I knew that this was not going to be good, and if you need to make micro adjustments, just like a tiny bit up, a tiny bit down, it's a lot of effort to be able to take everything on this on and off, to be able to adjust the heights, either add spacers or take spacers out. So it was kind of a pain. It was less than ideal. And then the other big thing is with this setup back here, if I wanted to take this thing apart and pull the bolt out, well, not necessarily take it apart, but field strip it for cleaning, I cannot actually get the bolt out easily with this. I've had to like really cram it against the cheek riser in order to be able to remove my bolt for cleaning. So again, less than ideal, and I figured I could kill two birds with one stone by adding a stock to this thing, or a new chassis, I guess. And now, that being said, I did still run this in this configuration, plus the bipod and silencer, in that intro to long range class. So this thing was doing 1,000 yards all day long, really no issues whatsoever. So it was still doable. However, after being in that class, getting to see other people's setups, picking the brain of the instructor, Sidewinder Concepts, who was phenomenal, he kind of helped me figure out what I wanted to do. And as you can probably see in the box behind me here, picked up one of the KRG Bravo stocks for this thing. I've been doing quite a bit of shooting with it like that, and that addressed all my issues. So let me go ahead and reconfigure this back to that. Actually, before we do that, let me go ahead and talk about accuracy, since that's going to be something that is also going to matter to people wondering about a precision rifle. So what I want to do is roll in some pictures here, or not, well, I'm going to show you the targets, and then we'll talk about what kind of accuracy I was able to get in the factory stock, and then just some quick preliminary testing I did with this thing after changing it into the different stock. So what we're looking at here, okay, if I get any of these correct, my memory's not great. I did verbalize them as I was shooting, so as I'm going through and editing this, I will make any corrections. But I believe this top left target, and these are all at 100 yards, was 140 grain Hornady ELD match, factory loaded ammo. This guy here, and for what that's worth, this 5-shot group is looking just under 2 inches, including this little flyer off here to the left. With these 4, we're definitely sub 1 inch. But the total group just under 2. With 147 grain, we were a lot more consistent. So we are looking at, with this guy, probably right around 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch 5-shot group on the factory 147 grain Hornady ELD match. This center target were, I'm pretty sure, my hand loads. So my own hand loads shooting 147 grain Hornady ELD match. And you can watch my video on my load development to see how I came up with that. That is right at about 1 inch for 5 shots, just under 1 inch 5 shots. Then we went to some Cellar and Bellet, and then we also did some of the 143 grain Hornady ELD X, the Precision Hunter. I don't remember which group was which, but one of them to either the cheap full metal jacket, we are again right around 2 inches with all 5 shots. And then I'm pretty sure this bottom right one here was the, you know what? All right, one of them was the other. You'll see again when I go through it. But this one over here, again, either the 143 grain ELDX or the Cellar and Bellet, we are a lot bigger. With the 4 shots that are the closest, we're 1.5 inches or so. With all 5 shots, we're probably about 2.5 inches. I was kind of disappointed with how the 143 grain shot. Again, I don't remember which one of those lower ones it was, but I remember being disappointed with it, because if I am going to take this rifle hunting, that's likely the load that I would use. And I knew that due to my, cheek weld and some of the other ergonomic issues that I had with that rifle, that those could also be part of the inconsistency of some of those groups. So I actually took, when I was filming those groups, to show you guys a kind of a cross-section of ammo with, a couple hundred rounds through this rifle, obviously broken in at this point. I wanted to show you guys what it would do with a good stock on it. So again, the KRG Bravo is the one that I ended up with. So we went back to the factory 147 grain ELDX from Hornady, and my first shot, presumably getting this rifle settled into the stock, was this one down here. And then we slung 4 shots into right at about 1/2 inch. Again, you'll be able to see that. And so that was the first rounds period through the new KRG Bravo stock, and I was super excited. And after seeing that, I decided, well, let me take a load that I know was pretty inconsistent in the gun before, So I took the 147 grain, or sorry, 143 grain ELDX, that Precision Hunter stuff, and put 5 shots in here, right at about an inch center to center on that for 5 shots, and that is way more acceptable to me if I'm going to be taking this thing rifle hunting. At 1 MOA, I can with a good clear conscience take shots at some pretty extended ranges. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into what this thing looks like now and talk about how that has affected things from here on out. So here you can see the KRG Bravo stock that this thing is now sitting in, and so let's talk about how this addresses some of the shortcomings of the factory stock. Now, I know a lot of you are going to look at this and say, well, that just looks like an HMR with extra steps, and you're not entirely wrong. Now, I will say this is definitely lighter than the HMR line from Bergara, at least their 6.5 Creedmoors, just due to the weight reduction of this stock, and then also the barrel profile being a little bit skinnier, and again, the barrel length being a little bit shorter. But again, the first issue I had being the double feeds. This thing will now feed from a AICS pattern magazine. So I've got one of the Magpul magazines in here, and I have had with some exception. So I was going to say I've had no feeding issues since changing this. That's not entirely true. So when I was at a scoped carbine class, mostly just filming for that class, but I did run my rifle through the course of fire, which was between 1 and 700 yards, multiple targets. You had to range the target on your own and then engage the target on your own. And when I was resting this against a barricade, when I would push against the magazine, it was causing feeding issues, but under normal circumstances, that has not been an issue, and I do plan on buying a little bumper to prevent that from happening in the future. And again, the other big thing being the comb height. This has all the fine adjustment I want to be able to get this thing into position to rest my eye nicely behind the scope, and so this has made that a lot better. I can get way more comfortable behind this. I can really rest and relax my face on this gun, meaning that this is going to be something I can stay behind for a long period of time, keeping my eyes on the target, able to re-engage targets faster. Basically everything is now better, and I now can still mount my Harris bipod, but if I wanted to, I can also now run clip-on devices, which may or may not be something I'm working on in the future. I've also got M-LOK slots. I've got a lot more versatility with this KRG Bravo stock now. It did cost $350. So, you know, if you're looking to do something on a budget, you might be better off buying something like this straight out of the gate. But so far, I'm extremely happy with how this is set up. I'll probably be doing a dedicated review of the stock once I've got some more time on it. And again, I'll probably be doing a review on this scope. But all that to say, this Bergara rifle has been excellent, and I've got this thing set up in a way that I am very happy with. The accuracy, I could not ask for much more than what I'm getting out of it. It's really shown me what my capabilities can be as a shooter, and it's allowed me to really progress my skills while knowing that the gun is not the limiting factor, which is always a good thing to know. What is the equipment? I know with this rifle, any issues as far as accuracy are probably going to be on me. So, if you have experience with Bergara rifles, put that in the comment section down below. I want people to get more than just my experience with these things. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and throw those in the comment section down below as well. I definitely want to say thanks to my patrons, because I paid for the rifle, I paid for the stock. Primary Arms did provide me with the scope, but all the ammo and everything like that has all been paid for by me, thanks to the generous support of people over on Patreon. It's a pretty small club of us over there, and the people over there are really great people, extremely supportive, very engaged, and I think we've got like 16 or 18 people over there. Let me get a live number here. We got 16 people over there, 16 out of the 45 or so thousand people subscribe to the channel. You guys are what's making this happen. So big thanks to them. Because of that, we post all our content over there early. I'm about to do an exclusive video for them talking about the Springfield Hellion and the CZ Brand 2 and my experience with those rifles so far. So if any of that stuff sounds interesting, or you just want to financially support the channel, definitely check out my links to Patreon down below in the description. But anyway, with all that being said, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.